Good news can often get overlooked or buried by the negative in our everyday lives. So let's change that. I'm Adrianna.
And I'm Wyatt.
We're just two ordinary people without any special qualifications or anything, trying to navigate life. We invite you to join us as we share wholesome stories, news articles of hope, and ideas about how we can all make the world just a little bit brighter. We are Uplifting Positive Stories. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Uplifting Positive Stories. I'm once again joined by my husband Wyatt.
Thanks for bringing me back again.
Of course. I'm Adrianna. I'm excited for today's episode. As I teased a little bit last time, we've got a very interesting article about the positive uses of AI that I'm excited to share in a little bit. But to start off, we have some interesting Reddit stories that we're going to share. They're a little bit shorter ones this time, but I feel like they're very profound in their own way. These stories are from the subreddit, What's the Most Wholesome Experience You've Had?
Did I hear correctly that we have a couple stories here?
We do. They're a little bit on the shorter side. I feel like they're both pretty uplifting in their own ways. And they have a central theme that we'll talk a little bit about too.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I'm excited.
If you haven't had the chance to look through the subreddit, What's the Most Wholesome Experience You've Had? It's an awesome subreddit. There's so many stories that people share on here. There were hundreds that I was sifting through. So this one will probably come up a lot on this podcast. But to start off, the story says, I was living in a one-horse town and working as a cashier in a gas station in my early 20s. I was upset and crying that I hadn't been paid on time and I couldn't pay bills, etc. This sweet old lady came in for her weekly newspaper and saw me crying. She asked what was wrong and offered a hug, which I, of course, accepted. Later on, I started dating my future husband and soon found out that sweet lady was his mom.
Aww.
It's 13 years later, and I still feel like I won the mother-in-law lottery.
Aww.
Yeah.
That's cool. I feel like we usually hear about like the negative flip side of that, where you do something that's like rude to somebody and then that person turns out to be, you know, your significant other's parent who you were just about to meet, or an employee you're about to have an interview with, you know. So it's kind of cool to hear a positive spin on that.
Right, exactly. You never know how that person might, come up in your life later. Just be careful, I guess, what you say and what you do, because you never know how that person might be tied to you in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool. So this next story is kind of similar vein, but has a very cool message to it too. All right, this one says, one time while waiting on a bus, I sat next to a man who seemed a bit off. I was kind of nervous. I was 20 at the time, but once I noticed he had tears on his cheek, I thought, okay, I'm going to just ask him if he's okay. He immediately started to open up to me and tell me about his trouble with schizophrenia, and he had been finding it hard to get help because he doesn't have a place to stay, but that he was about to get a bus to his estranged brother's house, the only person he knows, no other family or friends, to stay for a few days, but he felt like a burden. I just started telling him I feel for his situation and we could talk for a while if he needed. So we did, told me about how his schizophrenia developed when he was my age and made him unable to attend college, so it screwed up his life since. I didn't say anything except comforting phrases. When his bus came, he left and he thanked me for talking to him, and I wished him the best. His face stuck in my mind because it was a very kind face. 2 years later, at that exact same bus stop, I started thinking of him again and wondering how he was, and then out of the blue, he was there. I was very shocked at the coincidence. Anyway, we immediately started to chat again, and he remembered me. He explained that since going to his brother's, he ended up staying there a lot longer, in fact was still there, and he now goes to CBT, I think, and he's got a job now and everything. Moving out on his own soon, probably is by this point, was really nice to know his life turned around. We only met twice, but it's crazy. I'll always think of him, and he said he'd thought of me too from time to time. I didn't really do anything for him other than be someone to listen to him, but he explained before our final goodbye that it made him feel a lot better about things, and he appreciated it a lot. Maybe not the most wholesome story, but I don't know, it felt really special to me. Edit. I forgot to add, he said if he ever saw me again that he'd buy me a coffee so we can catch up again. It's been 2 years now, but still hoping that happens. We never said our names or anything. We'll always be strangers, but it's like we have this bond of I can tell you anything because we are strangers, if that makes sense. I also opened up to him about stuff too, by the way.
Wow. That's kind of sweet. I really hope he's got a good support group or a good support system, because schizophrenia is not something to... That's not an easy thing to deal with. I can't even imagine.
I know, especially how he said that it made it so he was unable to go to college. I mean, that's rough. But, you know, it's cool that this stranger on a bus was willing to listen to him, you know. It's crazy how just being willing to listen to others can make a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it made an impact if that person remembered them years later, 2 years later.
Mm-hmm.
But such a small thing. I feel like it's one of those things where people tend to be very private and not want to share with others, but sometimes just being able to talk through your problems can just make it that much lighter.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, being a person that's willing to take the time to listen to somebody and not just like give your opinions or anything like that, but just be an ear. Because I love that they said that they just said reassuring phrases. Yeah, comforting phrases. You know, sometimes it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to give your expert opinion or your advice, but just being willing to sit there and listen can just mean the world.
Mm-hmm. It kind of ties into the first episode we did, where in that episode we're talking about like the way people step up if they know something's bothering. But even if it's just, again, being able to articulate your problems, you know, or the things that are stuck in your mind that you just need to get out, you know, just have an empathetic ear can sometimes make almost more of a difference, you know, even if it's not like a direct influence, but anything that helps mental health and emotions, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, for sure. When I was in college, I had the most amazing teacher. It was an abnormal psychology class, and she both taught, and then she was also a therapist on the side. And she told us stories in class about how she took time out of her weekends to go down to kind of like our downtown area and would go just try to find people that were living on the streets just to sit and talk with them. And the thing she would do is she would go up to them and say, "Hey, I am just somebody that would like to be an ear. If you're willing to tell me your story and if I can just listen, that would be amazing, and I'll buy you lunch. I'll get you whatever you want from Dairy Queen or from McDonald's or Subway. But yeah, you can order whatever you want as long as I get to sit with you for an hour and hear your life story." And the story she told about these people and how they just lit up. I mean, obviously she got him a meal, so there's that monetary component, but she said that the food didn't even seem to matter as much as just sitting there for an hour and listening to them and hearing their stories of what had happened to them and how they were coping with whatever they were coping with. There was a man that was suffering with schizophrenia that she met with quite a few times. But yeah, so he couldn't hold a job because of it. It got so bad that he was having, you know, delusions, and he was having hallucinations, both auditory and visual. And so he couldn't hold down a job, and that's why he ended up homeless. And he was the nicest guy, she said, like just the sweetest guy. But you know, he had a bad situation. And so she would just sit down there for an hour and talk with him and listen, just kind of just be an ear. Yeah, it was just cool to hear that, how much of an impact that had. And what a cool way to give back without having to have a bunch of money or anything like that, just to kind of volunteer yourself to be that ear.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just makes you feel like a human, you know, especially when you're in that kind of situation. It's easy to feel othered. And so little things like that make you feel like not an outsider. We're all human beings and stuff. We all go through through different things. So just to be able to actually like connect with one another, I think is huge.
Yeah, for sure. Those two stories I thought were pretty touching. And like I said, with the whole, you never know when you're going to run into someone later in life, and just so cool that, you know, they ended up reconnecting, and because it's not often that you get to see the impact you had on someone, or, you know, or they get to see the impact they had on you. And so to have that come back later on and be able to see that and be like, wow, we still remember each other, and wow, I didn't realize that had an impact on you. That had an impact on me too, you know, like, it's just cool. Mm-hmm. Anyways, so moving on. Our next story, like I mentioned earlier, is a story about the positive side of AI.
So shifting from, you know, connecting as humans, and now we're going to artificial intelligence.
But AI is helping us to be able to connect with people in a really cool way. So the story's titled, "A Paralyzed Woman Couldn't Speak for More Than 20 Years, and with AI, now she can just by thinking." This is a story that I found on Business Insider. There are other stories out there about this same person and the same study that was done. I saw one from like the New York Times. So yeah, We'll link the article in the description of this podcast episode. Feel free to look on the internet to find other stories. They all have more details, obviously, because they got different interviews and stuff like that. So, but it's a very cool story. The gist of it is a 30-year-old woman named Ann Johnson had a brainstem stroke about 20 years ago. And even though she survived, she was left paralyzed and wasn't able to speak. It's a condition known as locked-in syndrome. So she's still fully there and present, but she just can't speak. But the article says, with the help of a new AI-driven brain implant, she has become the first patient to successfully use a groundbreaking neurotechnology that synthesizes speech and facial expressions from brain signals, the researchers behind the project claim. It says here, the neurotechnology uses artificial intelligence to decode the woman's brain signals while she tries to speak, and though her muscles don't move, her brain sends a signal perceptible to the electrodes, which decodes what she is trying to say and then synthesizes speech and facial expressions using a computer-generated avatar. So basically, her brain, the way I'm understanding it, is that her brain is trying to send signals to the muscles to be able to move, like her mouth and things like that, but her body's just not able to do that. And so with this, it's able to read those muscle movements that the brain is trying to control and recreate it so that I can actually say the word she's trying to say. Is basically, I could be misunderstanding it, but that's how it sounds to me, which is pretty amazing. So those people that do suffer with that locked-in syndrome, where they're, fully present, having full thoughts, they just can't express them for whatever reason, they can actually express it through the AI still and still be able to speak like they were before.
And is there a system in place where you can kind of toggle it on and off to it's not just talking every time you think or move your face or anything? Because I would assume that could be a curse if it's just nonstop. Because sometimes you have thoughts that are best left as thoughts. Like the intrusive thoughts come in. It's great up until the intrusive thought comes out. So I'd hope that there's like a little switch you can flip on or off.
Yeah, I don't know how far it's progressed and what form that it's available. I don't think it's available to the public yet. It sounds like this was just a study to see if it's possible. But it is exciting that we are possibly, nearing an age where we can have that readily available to people that have that need. It says here in the article, when I was at the rehab hospital, the speech therapist didn't know what to do with me, Johnson said, per the UCSF publication. Being a part of the study has given me a sense of purpose. I feel like I am contributing to society. I feel like I have a job again. It's amazing I have lived this long. This study has allowed me to really live while I'm still alive. So, just thinking about not being able to fully express yourself and not being able to communicate with others and how amazing that would be to be able to get that back after, I think she said 20 years. Yeah, 20 years. And being able to, once again, be able to speak. Just even for her care and stuff, to be able to express what she needs and stuff. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Just to be able to connect with people again,
Yeah, exactly. After that long. Yeah, it's cool to hear about these. I've heard other stuff about AI helping advance other things too, And so it's just cool to see this application in such a specific way, but on a way that could help a lot of people.
Yeah, obviously there's still a lot of unknowns with AI and everything. We need to look at any sci-fi fiction movie and they have their own thoughts on AI. So it's kind of cool to see something, at least one positive thing come out of AI. I'm sure there's others as well, but that's pretty unique and different.
Yeah, for sure.
The real question though is, can they use this technology to then be able to have dogs speak?
That would be really cool.
Everyone would pour all of the money into it. I can almost guarantee it. They needed to, kind of like in the last episode with put out adopt a penguin egg. You can do this with adopt a dog to be able to speak or something. And everyone just pitches in a little bit, and I think you get the world to get behind this to work. Dogs are so great. Don't you just wonder what they're thinking? So I don't know. Maybe that's just me wishing that can be reapplied to that.
I don't know, because it says that it helps with reading the muscle movements. I think it would just be we'd just be hearing bark. With this, so probably a ways off from that, but that would be really cool if they could advance it to that point. With how fast things are advancing, who knows. Thank you so much for joining us again for this episode of Uplifting Positive Stories. Like I said, we will link the article in the description below, as well as the subreddit that I found the stories from today. If you would like to be a part of the conversation, please reach out to us at upliftingpositivestories@gmail.com. You can send in positive stories, articles that you found really hopeful, or anything else that you want us to possibly talk about as a theme on the podcast about how we can all make the world just a little bit brighter. And if you share it with us, we might end up talking about it on a future podcast.
We also have a group on Facebook that you can try to join, and you can share stories there and read other people's stories. You can do it all anonymously if you want to.
Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.